Hola, and welcome to Kim at Home. It's Sneakerball 614 weekend.
We are Sneakerball 614. What it is that we do is a nonprofit organization that backs mental health awareness for the youth, okay? So everything that you guys have done today by purchasing tickets, by purchasing alcohol, that all goes back to our Sole Purpose program, which is an 8-week program in Columbus City Schools that we will roll out in the 2022-2023 school year. Absolutely. For resources, counseling, therapy for our children. We are big on hurt children become hurt adults, and we are trying to find a way to fix a solution that is hard, but we know that it can be done.
Sneakerball 614 was created to build awareness for youth mental illness, more specifically anxiety and depression. The goal is to host community events and facilitate mentorship programs that focus on building self-esteem and improving overall mental health. Community initiatives, giving back, and youth involvement are at the core of the Sneakerball 614. These events are something that you will look forward to every single year. This video is all about bringing awareness to mental health. We started out at the gala and casino night, and we will be ending with all of the professional panelists, and they will be talking to us about mental health, what it looks like, and exactly what it is that we can do to keep the conversation going.
And just like with physical health, you have little things that can kind of send off a warning that there may be a physical illness. Same thing with mental health. There's little things you may see that may signify there may be a mental illness here, like anxiety, depression, PTSD, things like that. And just like with physical, you might start getting headaches. That could be a sign of high blood pressure. For with kids, but just with the dogs, of course we have things like anger outbursts, but even you have things like, not being able to hold your bowels or like pee, all those things. But I want people to also think about, like, yes, we have all the behavior issues we see, but there's also overachieving and hyper-function. For me, it was overachieving, overexcelling, super high perfectionism, which then brought up anxiety, and that can take place in a 5-year-old. And you don't have to be an expert or know-it-all. It's just if you see something, just have a little conversation and check in.
When we talk about mental health, it's like, what is going on with me? It's not this element of like, I have to always know everything that's going on or everything that triggered this event, but just being aware that, hey, something doesn't feel right. Like, I'm not okay, and I need to spend some time to intentionally kind of try to figure out where that's coming from or how I'm impacted, to kind of, I guess, compartmentalize and be able to cope and manage moving forward after experiencing some disruption in your grounding.
So when I think of mental health, I try to explain it to people realizing that conditions can change us, however they can also change you in an abnormal manner. So if you notice that Tuesday you're great, Wednesday you have attitude, Thursday you don't like nobody, Friday you love everybody, you want to step out. This is a pattern in your life. So you need to pay attention to conditions, and it also includes having a healthy ecosystem. What does your ecosystem look like within your life? And sometimes we get used to dysfunction, and 50% of people know by the age of 14 whether they are suffering from a mental illness or not. Whether we address it in the right time is different, but over 50% of people know by the age of 14 years old whether they're suffering from mental illness. So for me, it's about being mindful of your conditions. If you find yourself changing constantly due to life conditions, then you're probably dealing with something. And even to see a therapist, just throw this in there, a lot of people think that something has to be wrong with them. However, how I explain it to my clients, whether here or in Atlanta, is to look at therapy as a partnership. That we simply are navigating through your story with you, but you're the author. And you just see that there are some missing pieces in your chapters. And so we're there to help you fill in those blanks.
Mental health is one thing, mental illness is another, and mental well-being is something totally different. And you mentioned perfectionism, Ashley, and you also mentioned, you go to, sometimes you have to go to therapy before you have a mental condition. And I'll speak to myself. Recently, I just discovered I was a perfectionist. I had no idea, and I'm 35 years old, and I would not have known that had I not gone to therapy. And it's just like, you will not know what your blood pressure is if you don't go to your primary care doctor. You may not know you got some trauma, and now you're a perfectionist if you don't go to a mental health therapist. So to me, mental health is getting those interventions, doing those check-ins, and making sure that you're continuously on a path towards well-being.
It's not a bad thing. Like, it is something that should be recognized. It's not, you're not less spiritual than somebody else. God doesn't love you any less. Your faith is not as worse as somebody else's faith. Like, your faith can just be as strong in you dealing with mental health issues. So that's the first thing that I really want to break the misconception when it comes to mental health in the church is like, oh, you can't have mental health. There's this, it's what people say, there can't be faith and there can't be fear living in the same place. Well, that's kind of not true. Like, fear is there, but the faith, it just allows us to go into battle through the fear.
Come on now.
Fear doesn't just alleviate, but so I really want the people to know that if you're a person of faith and you are dealing with some mental health issues, like, God still loves you.
Amen.
I'm still going to love
Yes.
you. Everybody who's around you, we're not going to look at you any differently. And guess what? If they do, they have something to worry about, and that's their relationship with God. So the mental health thing in the church is something that we should talk about more, and we're not running away from it. So.
The Bible talks a lot about the building of things. It talks about Jesus being the chief cornerstone. It talks about him completing the good work, and it doesn't happen right away. It's a process. Even when you're working out your own salvation, that's a process. What I'm getting to is this. What mental health looks like is always working towards bettering your situation. And I think if you look at physical standpoint, we take our children to the doctor once a year, or when they have their shots they need to get taken. We never miss those appointments. Even ourselves, we get our physicals every year, we go to the dentist, we never miss those appointments. We're very proactive with the physical. So spiritual health is being proactive to make sure that you're continually building on what God has already given you. Now, to some of us, we come into the world with certain issues, but we can still build on what we've been given to become better. It's all about continuing to build on what you currently have and continuing to check in to let him grow you till he completes the good work at the end. And I think that's how we have to look at it. I may not be where I want to be, but the fact that I'm still alive means that I got opportunity to build on my current condition, my current situation, my current state, which allows me to be able to deal better with what I'm dealing with and to be able to go and seek help from a clinical standpoint as well as a spiritual standpoint.
What are some of the clinical things that you would say to somebody who is like myself, who does not want to take those past experiences and make them grow? They kind of want to just put them to the back and literally just move forward as if they never happened.
For me, I always tell people it is the inevitable. You cannot move forward without using those dysfunctional pieces from the past. And I deal with that a lot when I talk to couples. So when I always have the one that was kind of the predator in the situation that says, I just want to move on. Dr. Jessie, I just want us to move on. She want to talk about it. I just want to move on. Well, sir, calm down. That's one. Calm down. So we don't have another problem. Number two is you cannot move forward without addressing the issues. And so I constantly tell people there's a difference between getting over something and getting through something. Me getting over it, a lot of times we use that in our community, just say, I don't want to deal with it. So I'm over it. Well, you have an attitude and a temper tantrum. But getting through it, not you, I like you. But getting through it means I've addressed it. And so a lot of times we want to just get over something, but we have to address those pain points, or it will be a PTSD issue. It will be traumatic moments that come up. So if you dated someone that was a liar in your past and they really broke you and hurt you, so now when one person gives you half of a lie, they all look like your ex. Everybody look like him. And because why? Because you never really addressed that matter. And even, touching on the church, since, I deal with that, I even tell people, especially people of faith that I counsel a lot, that are people of faith, and I'm certainly a person of faith, but prayer is not the exit strategy. That is not the exit strategy. We see people, for example, that will go to the altar 10 times for the same issue. I don't pray for those people. I'm like, I done been to you 3 times. We're done with this. It's deeper than the altar.
Yes.
We're not dealing with this. You done been here 3 times for the same thing. And so, I tell them, but I want people to deal with me that way because I want you healthy. And so it's nice, you like to shout, I see you shout. I know you had to choose 12. However, that's not bringing you out. And so you need to address your issues, and that's not God's responsibility. That's your responsibility. And God honors us more when we can have a transparent relationship with Him. And why mental health illness has such a bad image within the church is because we use religion as a fear factor and a scapegoat.
You better preach.
That I'm just going to pray. So for example, I have someone that comes to me that says, I want to start a business, Dr. Jesse, but I'm just praying and I'm fasting. Eat the chicken. Eat the chicken. Because reality is that you're just scared. So let's deal with that emotion. It's the fear of you failing, the fear of you not knowing what to do. So I like to tell people to deal with that emotion, but it is inevitable to get through some of our past traumatic moments. That's just inevitable. We have to deal with that in order to process forward.
That's deep.
So to your point, the burdens that you and I deal with, the things we go through in life, God never put it on you for you to carry on your own. And I think that's part of our issue as a culture, is that we don't like to talk about what we're going through, talk about what's happening to us. We like to internalize it and carry it on our own, as opposed to understanding that you have community that can also help you carry that thing. That's why the Bible says, bear one another's burdens. And so, if I just have it in my hands, it's just gonna be an issue. So I'll give you a perfect example. A basketball in my hands is worth $20. In LeBron James' hands is worth $1 billion contract. A baseball bat in my hands, I might be able to hit a ball, but Barry Bonds will hit a home run, right? You take some fish and loaves in my hand, I'll make you a fish sandwich, you put it in Jesus' hands, he gonna feed 5,000, right? So depending on whose hands you put it in will determine the outcome of what happens. So if God has given you something, it's not for you to carry on your own, but oftentimes for you to put it back into his hands and allow him to show you community. Your community can be your pastor, it can be your counselor, it can be your therapist. They're not all working against each other. They're working together in community to help you to be able to get through what you're going through for the purpose of going back and grabbing somebody else who's also going through what you're going through to pull them into that same community or a similar community.
On that is just understanding that your healing is always helping, right? And so I think that when we do the work to say, do our own internal healing, it's also helping, right? It might help the next generation. It might help, maybe someone in ministry that you serve with. It might help people that you are called to touch in the community, however you're living out your purpose, whether that's in your career or your volunteer experiences. And so we can't kind of merge those worlds, especially in the spiritual space, because one, God called us all to, be a light in some regard. Right, and so when you kind of avoid like the things of your past, it also creates an absence somewhere else. I think a lot of times we become tied to our trauma. We allow it to become our defining element. And just because of the things that you've experienced, there is that other side to say, this is what has happened to me, but this is not what I have allowed it to become, right? I am who God called me to be. I am living in my purpose, and so these are some things that were outside of my control. But my God is big enough to be able to help me overcome that and be able to do what it is that he put me here.
The question is, why is it so hard for community to get behind, not just mental health, but our babies? I think we see a lot of people saying, oh, we need, but we don't see anybody actually going out and doing. Why do you feel like it is so hard? I'll throw out some slangs, you guys tell me. Do you think that it's hard because they feel like the children won't come to? Do you think it's because the parents won't, want the resources? Like, why? Just why?
From what I see in the families and the kids I'm around and work with, and me being one of those children, is the fact of, again, it's a fear factor of feeling weak. You have a lot of single parent households, of course. And I don't never really agree with the notion that a woman can't raise a man, because I wouldn't be sitting on the stage today. My mom raised me to be a thinking man, and my mom was not my biological mother. So to break that mold, we have to talk about it. Mothers, I know you love your son dearly, but you gotta love him enough to let him go, to let him understand and find himself, whatever that may be. You know what I mean? The males that are in their life, are you being too soft? You being so? Why are you dressing like that? Why are your pants so tight? Why are you looking like that? That's a person. He's an individual. If that's what he wants to do, let him do that. Because you don't know what he's going to be when he grows up. Today's society, we don't know what our child is going to do when they leave their house. We don't know if they're coming back or not. If they want to see him on the 6 o'clock news or anything. So therefore, in the community as in the household, we have to learn how to support the child wherever they are. Meet them where they're at. When you have a mental health specialist or anybody coming in the house with a clipboard or computer and telling you about your child or what they for the diagnosis is, but they don't know the culture and understanding. You can know all the clinical diagnoses as you want, but you can't understand why Raekwon keeps going to school and punching the same kid in the face every day, or tripping a teacher or doing whatever to try to get a laugh. You don't know that. You're talking about mental health. It's just a fear factor, like, oh no, my son is strong. He ain't like that. He ain't like this. No, your son is this way, or your daughter is this way. You have to let that go.
If I feel like I'm in a safe space, then I'm more apt to give you myself. I'm more apt to be transparent and open up to you. And sometimes within our community, just honestly, I don't feel like that we create enough safe spaces that's safe for everyone. And in addition to that, from the beginning, I mean, when our people are brought here from West Africa, we deal with historical trauma and barriers. And it just transcends from one generation to another. And so I believe that we have to implement some strategies to create healthy spaces and safe spaces so that we can see the positive effect that we need to see.
Mental health wasn't always for us. And even just the perception, just the marketing, the advertising of it, even all this like mental health awareness is still very, very new. The profession of counseling alone is new. The profession of social work has been here a little longer, but still very new. And it all came from psychology, which was based and all created all the tests, all of our research, all of our everything, even down to attachment style and all these things were based on white men, not even white women. Okay, and so a lot of that we're having to rework and undo a lot of that work. And that takes time, it takes diligence, but also takes reshaping the model. And so it's just make it, like, don't forget those things as well. But I think also there's a stigma and there's a distrust. Like psychology, the government, it always hasn't been good for our people. We think about different experiments back in the day. We think about all these things that really do influence us. And so we do gotta talk about that part too. Black kids, whether you're talking 2 years old to 18, and you can't do counseling with 2-year-olds. I found out when I had to, okay? There's a lot to work on, sharing all of it. And so, but our perspective around kids, and it's not just with black people, I think it's just a thing, but especially with black people, how we view kids. I know how I grew up, like, during the daytime, you can't even be in the house. Even if I wanted to chill and just calm down because I have social anxiety, I can't be, because you gotta go out, okay? Because that's the kid's place, and when you come back in, what y'all doing in here? Go back out. So there's that, but also you're young, you don't have any worries, you don't have any stresses, you don't have anything to be anxious about or suicidal about. What do you mean? You're 5 or you're 17 or you're 13, we pay all of your bills, so there's nothing for you to be concerned about. So why then else would I say anything else to y'all or bring up anything if you told me over and over? Even if you don't tell me, it's how you hear your parents, your aunts talk about kids to other people. It's the word about safe spaces, and we don't really practice confidentiality with kids. You know, and I'm guilty of it. Even my little sister called my friend, like, let me tell you, my little sister just did, y'all. Or you call your sister, and they hear you talking about that, and we think it's also our business because it's our struggles as well as what we're going through. We're trying to learn how to do this, but they hear that, and they don't hear an adult venting about adult problems with their youth. They hear you sharing something that was very intimate to them. And so now that's not easy. That's work on our part. Like, we gotta call ourselves out. Like, how I'm supposed to expect you to calm down when you mad and you ain't never seen me deep breathe when I'm mad. So it's the part, like, what can shift within us that then creates spaces for them. You know, and that's a lot to undo. Yeah. And we can't undo it all at one time. And so I say, you know, even with this, like, pace yourself, be gracious with yourself. Because to be black, period, it's just so many things.
The biggest thing I would say to keep this conversation going is to just integrate the discussion about mental health into things that we are already doing as families and as a community. So if you're big on football Sunday fun day, then make that the day that you talk to your sons, your daughters, or whatever. Sunday fun day, we also gonna take 15 minutes after prayer and we're gonna check in with people emotionally. I'm a huge proponent of generosity starting at home, and when we can fix our homes, we can fix our communities.
Thank you so much for watching, and remember, you are not alone. Bye, guys.